A woman walks into a room and finds you reading, not scrolling, not performing, just present with a book you chose because it matters to you. She doesn't say it, but something shifts. Most men spend their entire lives trying to decode that shift. Diogenes understood it in a single glance. He sat in a barrel, owned nothing, refused every game Athens offered, and philosophers traveled across empires to ask him questions. Women didn't chase him for status. They were drawn to the only thing that can't be faked: clarity. Jung called it individuation. The process of becoming who you actually are instead of the projection others need you to be. Most men never start. They build lives around external validation, treating women like judges in a contest they didn't agree to enter. Diogenes rejected the contest entirely. When Alexander the Great stood over him and offered him anything he wanted, Diogenes told him to step aside, and he was blocking the sunlight. That's not arrogance. That's a man who knows what he values and refuses to negotiate it for approval. Women watch how you negotiate your attention. If you trade it cheaply for validation, they read you as abundant in need and scarce in self-possession. Diogenes had no wealth, no title, no strategy. He had a presence, and presence, when it's real, operates entirely outside the attention economy. You mistake scarcity for strategy. Real scarcity isn't withholding. It's the natural result of knowing what you won't trade. The man who refuses to perform is rare because most men are performing without realizing it. Modern dating incentivizes projection. Swipe apps reward curation over truth. Social proof replaces substance. You optimize your profile, manage response windows, and calculate when to reply, so you seem busy without being disinterested. These are games, and games work until you meet a woman who's tired of players. She doesn't want a man who knows how to give her attention. She wants a man who doesn't need to. Jung warned that the more you live for external validation, the more you hollow out the internal structure that makes you attractive in the first place. You become a mirror reflecting her expectations. And mirrors are helpful, but no one falls in love with them. Diogenes never mirrored. He sat in sunlight, read what he wanted, spoke plainly, and let the world decide whether to approach. Most people walked past. Some stopped. The ones who stopped weren't looking for a performance. They were looking for the thing performance hides: substance. You think withholding attention creates leverage. But leverage without substance is just manipulation. And manipulation is exhausting. Diogenes never leveraged. He refused to participate in systems that required him to fragment himself. You tell yourself you're being strategic. You wait 3 hours to text back. You avoid seeming too interested. You manage her perception like a campaign. But strategy assumes she's the prize and you're the contestant. Diogenes flipped that frame. He didn't compete for approval. He offered clarity, and the people who valued it selected themselves. You are not a contestant. You are the judge of whether she meets the standard you've set for your own attention. Most men never ask that question. They assume any interested woman is a win, so they adjust themselves to fit her frame. That adjustment is what kills attraction. Jung called it the shadow of the parts of yourself you hide to gain approval. The more you hide, the more you lose the coherence that makes you magnetic. Women can feel incoherence. They might not name it, but they sense when a man is performing rather than aligned. Diogenes was aligned. He had no shadow to hide because he refused to live by rules that required him to hide anything. When a woman tests your boundaries, she's not being difficult. she's checking whether you have any. Most men fail that test by adjusting. They think flexibility is kindness, but flexibility without a center is just compliance, and compliance repels. Here's the paradox. The behaviors that attract a woman early are the same behaviors that kill her desire later if you deploy them as tactics instead of living them as standards. You withhold attention to seem scarce. She interprets it as a value. But if scarcity is a tactic, she'll eventually sense the manipulation underneath. And the moment she does, attraction collapses. Real scarcity isn't withheld. It's the natural result of a life you've built that doesn't revolve around her validation. Diogenes wasn't playing hard to get. He was hard to get because his attention was reserved for what mattered to him. Philosophy, sunlight, honest conversation. Women weren't the goal. They were a byproduct of a man who knew what he valued. You think you need to create mystery, but mystery without substance is just absence. And absence doesn't build desire, it creates doubt. Jung said desire flows toward coherence. A man who is the same in public as he is alone. A man whose actions match his stated values. A man who doesn't need her approval to feel legitimate. That coherence is magnetic because it's rare. Most men splinter themselves across every platform, every interaction, every woman who shows interest. They become 1,000 curated versions of themselves, and none of those versions feel real. Diogenes paid a price for clarity. Athens mocked him. Philosophers debated whether he was wise or insane. He owned nothing, lived in a barrel, and rejected every social norm that promised comfort. Most men look at that and call it extreme. But extremity depends on what you're measuring against. If the norm is fragmentation, then coherence looks radical. If the norm is performance, then presence looks like rebellion. Diogenes didn't seek solitude. Solitude found him because he refused to negotiate his clarity for belonging. You will face the exact cost. The moment you stop performing, some people will walk away. Women who were attracted to the curated version will lose interest when they meet the real one. Friends who bonded over shared performance will feel threatened by your refusal to play along. That loss is not a failure. It's a filter. Jung called this the process of individuatio, becoming who you are by shedding who you're not. It's uncomfortable. It's lonely. And it's the only path to attracting people who value what's real. You think you're protecting yourself by performing. But performance is a cage, and the longer you stay inside, the smaller you become. Sovereignty starts with refusal, not refusal to engage, but refusal to engage on terms that fragment you. Diogenes refused wealth, status, and social approval, not because he despised them, but because accepting them required him to become someone he wasn't. You don't need to live in a barrel, but you do need to identify the systems that demand performance and decide whether participation is worth the cost. Most men never ask. They assume the game is mandatory. They optimize their profile, manage response windows, and calculate texts like chess moves, and they wonder why they feel exhausted. Jung said the goal isn't to win the game. The goal is to become the kind of man who doesn't need the game to feel whole. That shift changes everything. You stop asking, how do I get her attention? You start asking, is her attention worth my presence? That's not arrogance, that's discernment. And discernment is the foundation of masculine sovereignty. When you stop negotiating your clarity, you become a fixed point in a world of shifting variables. Women notice fixed points, not because you're withholding, because you're grounded. Set one boundary this week that you've been avoiding, not as a strategy, as standard. Tell her you don't text after 10, because you value your sleep. Cancel plans that require you to fragment your time or compromise your priorities. Stop liking posts from women who wouldn't meet you in person. These aren't tactics to create scarcity. They're the rules you live by to protect coherence. Jung said every boundary you enforce teaches people how to value you. Every boundary you abandon teaches them you're negotiable. Diogenes had no formal boundaries. He refused to participate in systems that required him to splinter. That refusal was its own boundary. You don't need a philosophy degree. You need to ask, what am I trading my presence for? If the answer is validation, you're underpricing yourself. If the answer is approval, you're performing. And performance is exhausting. Clarity isn't. Clarity is the decision to live by the rules that matter to you and let the world sort itself accordingly. Some women will walk away. Let them. The ones who stay will value the thing you refused to trade. Most men misread women because they assume attraction is a reward for good behavior. Do the right things, get the girl. But attraction doesn't work like a vending machine. It's not transactional. It's ecological. Women are drawn to men who create an environment of clarity, coherence, and calm. Not because those men are performing those traits, because those men have built lives where those traits are inevitable. Diogenes wasn't trying to attract women. He lived by a set of principles he would not compromise. Some women found that attractive. Most didn't. He didn't adjust. You reframe women not as judges, but as participants in a system you've designed. If she fits, she stays. If she doesn't, she leaves. Neither outcome is a failure. Jung said the anima, the internalized image of the feminine, shapes how you relate to real women. If your anima is a judge, you'll spend your life performing for her approval. If your animal is a companion, you'll seek women who can walk beside you without demanding you become someone else. Diogenes didn't need approval because his internal sense of value wasn't tied to external validation. He valued sunlight, truth, and philosophy. Women who valued those things approached. Women who didn't. That's not coldness. That's clarity. You were not born to be a mirror. You were born to be a presence that others either approach or avoid based on their own coherence. Diogenes sat in a barrel, owned nothing, and became one of the most memorable figures in Western philosophy, not because he played the game better, but because he refused to play it at all. Women don't need another man who knows how to optimize attention. They need a man who values his attention enough to guard it. That's the shift, from scarcity as a tactic to scarcity as truth, from withholding as a strategy to presence as a standard. You don't need to live in a barrel, but you do need to know what you won't trade. And you need to enforce that knowledge in every interaction, every text, every moment someone asks you to fragment yourself for their comfort. Jung said the goal of individuation is to become so aligned with your own values that external validation becomes irrelevant. Not because you're arrogant, because you're whole. Diogenes was whole, and wholeness, when it's real, doesn't need to announce itself. It just is, and people who value it will find you. The rest will walk past. Let them.